In today's lecture, we're going to go over how to build an auxiliary view using AutoCAD. The drawing we're going to use is this angled piece over here, angled bracket I'll call it for the sake of just giving it a name. AutoCAD's open on this side, so we're going to start with the view that we can build, which we've already talked about in class, which is this view right here. We can draw a piece of this, which is this front piece, but only the top piece that I highlighted. Okay. The other part that we can draw, I'll leave it using the highlighter, is the side. We can draw the side. And that's it. The rest is going to be derived from drawing these two elements, because the rest cannot be derived otherwise. So on the front view, your typical rectangle is what we can start with. So we'll just go ahead and draw a rectangle. The dimensions of the rectangle, we talked about it already. 1.25 we agreed to on the length, which is right here. Okay. On the height, we had the conversation already. We have the 1-inch dimension that's given, but we have to have the customer verify the 3/8. So the height is going to be 1 3/8. 1.375. So there's our basic rectangle. I drew it anywhere. Did you notice that? Does it really matter where I draw it? Yes and no. So that's a philosophy issue. But where do I start my drawing? Some people will say you must always start at 0, 0. Others will say it doesn't matter. Close to 0, 0 is always nice. The XY defines the world coordinate here, defines where 0, 0, 0, 0 is. Doesn't have to be on 0, 0. We have this, so then we do what? The fillet command, remember that? The radius, that's already been covered in class. So the radius is 0.25. That's how you get the corners. Okay, then we have our shapes, and what did I always suggest? What's the most popular command that you'll find yourself using is offset 0.25. So we'll offset in. Now you'll notice I did make an assumption. I used the rectangle command for the outer shape, and then I just did offset by 0.25. And the assumption is that, which is true in this case, it's 0.25 by 0.25. But is this bottom one correct? Nope, because that's supposed to be 3/8. Okay, so keep that in mind. So you do have to explode your rectangle. X enter, because that bottom line is wrong. I could leave it there and just offset it the 1/8 of an inch that I need to move it, because 1/4 plus 1/8 is 3/8. But you have to remember to do that. Otherwise, you will put it in the wrong spot. You don't want to do that. So be very, very careful of that. These lines become your center lines later, so don't be too eager to delete them. All right? Leave them in your drawing, because they become your center lines later. So I just drag them out. Then I could immediately jump into the circle command. And the center is this. This one wants to give me radius. I don't want radius, I want diameter. Why? Because that's the information I'm given. 0.125, remember, 0.13 is 0.125. Please remember that. Just because something is shown to 2 decimal places does not mean you draw to 2 decimal places. Always remember that. 0.13 is 0.125. Okay, 0.13 is 0.125. Just like 0.63 over here is 0.625. Remember that. Please remember that. Okay, the next circle is going to be the outer diameter, which is 0.25. But that's radius, so what do? Right mouse button, diameter, 0.25. So you're going to have a double circle, because it's a counterboard. Remember that. Okay? So that's all you can draw in this view. You don't have enough information to build the bottom piece of it, so don't even try. Next, drawing the right side, as I always say, track across. We know the height is this height, so that's easy. That's there. Now what's this angle? from 0, it's what? 45 degrees, because 135 is the angle given here. So, easiest way to do this, if I was going to operate with efficiency, I'd go to my drafting settings, my object snap, I'll leave them where they are, those are fine. My polar tracking, instead of using incremental angles of 90, which is not the best, I tend to pick 15 degrees. That way I can get increments of 15, 30, 45, 90, get it? 60. So I usually go 15 degrees. Track using all polar angle settings. If you do track orthogonally, that means vertical or horizontal, which means you eliminate what's the point of 15 degrees. So you want to make sure it says track using all polar angles. And polar angle measurement relative actually makes it a little faster. You only have to type in relative to where you're at, 45 degrees versus something, versus absolute, which is where 0 is always at the right horizontal position, like on a protractor. When you hit OK, now when I draw a line, see that? That's 180, and I can actually increment it to what I want, which is what? 135. Now I want to go at an angle and I want to draw at the right length. What was the button that I hit on my keyboard to switch from angle to, well, right now it's on length, so it doesn't matter. The angle is good. But if I hit tab, it lets me toggle between the two dimensions. The tab, T-A-B, tab button. I'm hitting it so you can hear me hitting it. See that? That's how you toggle between the two. In our case, we do want to change the length. The length is what we want to affect. So the length is both this dimension, the 1 inch to the center, as well as this radius right here, which is the 0.63, or is it 625? 625, remember that. So 1.625, if I can learn how to type, is the length. 1.625, done. That's it. If that's correct, the best way to check yourself is go ahead and measure. 135, we're good to go. That's how we check our measurements. Okay, now the thickness is right here, which is a 1/4 inch, so use the offset again. Offset you've known before, it's a tool you know. You can type it in or you can pull it down off of here, doesn't matter. 0.25. So you offset this line back, you offset this line out. See how the two lines don't touch each other? That's okay, we don't care. Extend the one line up, hit escape. Extend the one line down, hit escape. I'm using my grips to do this. Make sure they stay vertical and at the right angle. That's the only thing you got to worry about. Connect the dots for these endpoints. Then all you got to do is trim. Pick the two lines, then what you want to cut off. Remember, every time in between, what do you have to hit? When I jump into trim, remember, highlight what you want. When you're done highlighting what you want to trim with, right mouse button, then you can click on what you want to get rid of. When you're done, right mouse button, enter. Got it? It's right mouse button, space bar, enter. That's how you always jump into the next element of the command. Now that you have this in place, now we get to the stuff that we're really lecturing about today, which is carrying our lines across, just like you did when you did hand drawings. Remember that back in the day? Had a drafting board out with a T-square and everything. Guess what? The same principles we apply in hand drawing, we directly apply here when it comes to making elliptical odd angle faces. Okay, when we're showing a true projection across as we are. We do need to have a few things in. The offset, we need to have the center line identified for where the hole belongs in this view, okay, which is this mark right here. That will become the center line. See? We will need to know the edges of where that hole will be, since the hole is 1/2 inch diameter. Then we're going to offset a 1/4 inch both ways. We are going to trim again, of course, so I could trim off the pieces that don't belong there. So we have that reference, right? Now, I need to make them hidden lines and center lines. Do you remember how to do that? Maybe, maybe not. It's up here in properties. First thing we do is make sure we've got the lines that we want. Right now we don't. So I got to go into other, and I got to go into load. As long as I'm in the AutoCAD.lin, I click anywhere inside the box, inside the main box, and I hit the letter H for hidden. Okay, I'm going to intentionally pick hidden 2, which is half size, just to make sure I can visibly see these hidden lines. I'm going to hit OK. So hidden is in there. I'm going to go back to load, click inside the box. This time I'm going to pick C for center. Again, I'm going to pick the 0.5 one, so it's half scale. I'm going to hit OK. And hit OK. Once I have those in, then I can click on any line and jump over here to my properties and change it to be center line. Okay, now it didn't change, did it? Maybe if I extend it out a little further, now it changed. But you see how long it has to be for you to see that center line? Even though I made it hidden 2, it's still not good enough. So if I go back in here, go to other again, we want to load just to bring the line types in. But there's also something called show detail. When you click on show detail, you have the ability to change the scale of everything you see. So even though I picked half scale, it's still not good enough. When I go to global scale factor and I make that 0.5, first I have to type in the right number, 0.5, like that. And I hit OK. Did you see how the line changed in the background? Undo. Watch. I'm going to shorten this line before I do this so that way you really see the change. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Make sure it stays aligned. See how it wants to move everywhere? If your line starts doing this, stop yourself and delete it. You may have accidentally changed its alignment. Offset that other line again, 0.625. This guy. This is your reference line. And this, make sure to stretch it out just that long. Keep it. A center line has to be longer than the object. Then we go back into properties, and I'm going to show you one more. Whoops, not thickness. I'm going to show you other. I'm going to move this dialog box here so you can watch the center line, the long line. Okay. What kind of line is it? Do we know yet? We don't. Because what did I do? Redraw it, right? So we're going to click on the line and make sure that it's center line. See that? Center line. At the same time, let's change the other 2 to be hidden lines. They're hidden, but they're very, you see how they turn into 2 little dashes. Not much. Not much change. So when we go into line type, go to other. If you don't like the way it looks, that's where details. See? Normally it's hidden. So you have to click show detail. See that? As I toggle back and forth. Show detail. You could change your global scale factor. Global scale factor. Global scale factor. Let's say it's at 0.5, right? When I hit enter, whoops, cancel, sorry. I actually have to hit OK. Then it changes it. You see how they all changed? These dashes became more, added another dash to it, and now the center line looks like a center line. Okay? I have not talked about layers yet. I want to focus on trying to show you the auxiliary view, but that's how you would make that more apparent what it is. Remember though, now you got to carry the lines across. Got to carry the lines across. So all these lines are carrying across, including the center line. See that? Then you need a line from midpoint of here straight down. All of these lines represent, this line here represents the center of everything, because this center is the center of this arc as well as the center of this hole. See that? So this center that's in blue is the center of both items. Now is when you draw the ellipse. Now is when you go in here and draw an ellipse. Now is when you come in here and draw an ellipse. Center ellipse. Where's the center again? This one. The outer edge is there. And here, this line, this piece right here with this piece, this represents the face. So that's why this curve is here, because this is the face. Okay? To make the back side that you see here, see this back side, how you see a piece of it there? All you have to do is copy. Just copy this from here to here. That's it. Just copy it straight down. Because this represents the front and this line represents the back. Then you can trim. Okay? And the trim is based on where the perimeter lines are. The perimeter of your object. So I'm going to trim the back first so you can see the back side form. Okay? And then the front. So that's how this looks. So this straight line goes straight down. Okay? And that mark, it ended where this arc ended. If I ghost it in, you'll see. This ended with this. It ended there. Okay? In this position. Okay? You zoom out, it's not so visible. You think it ended with this line. No, it's got nothing to do with that line. This ended with this. See that? And that's how you build that piece of it. That's how I know if it's correct on your drawing. I could tell because these match up beautifully with each other. If they don't, some people will fake it and they try to make these fit, have the same end point. They can't. They physically cannot share the same end point. This is a different end point from this. See that? The end point of the front arc is up here. The end point of the back arc is back here. Why? Because it's back there. When you look at the right side view, this is in front and this is in back. You can't share the same center. It's physically impossible. The next arc, what's it called again? Ellipse, right? I picked up here. I go up. Now across, that's the big question. How far across does it go? What's the diameter of that hole? 0.5. So it goes across 0.25. And that's what it looks like. Same thing here, by the way. Just like you see, this represents where the front of this hole is. This back line represents where the back of it is. So you copy this circle. Did I put it in the right spot? Uh-oh. Did it go in the right spot? What do I notice? This center is here. And this is there. You see how it's a little off? Why would it be two ellipses? It wouldn't be a perfect just one single ellipse. Because where do I see the hole? It's on a slanted surface, so it's a slight angle. I'm not going to stress out over that. When you draw this, especially if it's an AutoCAD, I'm okay with you drawing it. If it's just partnered with the top one or the bottom one. Because technically it's got a little extra curve in here. Okay? And the reason it has a little extra curve is because it is at an angle. Okay? Even though it shares the same center. See that? This arc, if I have to be exceptionally difficult, which I can be, trim off of here, and this one trims off of there. And that's technically what you have. That's technically the shape you're after. And this is the shape you would copy down. Here and here. This is the shape you would copy down. And the only reason you're copying that down is this becomes hidden line. Remember that? I talked about hidden lines before. But now that I have a hidden line in my drawing, I can just use what? Match properties. Take this guy and turn that into a hidden line. If I turn this into a hidden line, what happens? The whole thing becomes a hidden line. That's a problem. that we fixed with the previous project. The way we fix it is we use the break command. Don't forget the break command. Not break with a gap, but break to a point. Okay, so pick this object at that point. Then you gotta actually pick the command again. Pick this object to that point. Then the inside arc can be turned into a line. Okay, and then the side lines, these guys, become what? They have to turn into hidden lines. This one becomes a hidden line, and that one becomes a hidden line. So that technically is what that view now looks like, with the reference geometry to make it happen. Do you see that? Right out of hand drawings, people. Literally right out of hand drawings. Back in the day when you use a T-square and a board. The process does not change because I'm in AutoCAD. And that's how that view looks. What else is missing? You should have, there's a couple things missing. I should not have deleted the center line. Whoops. Oh well. Shouldn't have. So I got to draw that line back in. This guy. So I'm going to track it over and draw that through. All of these I could turn into center lines right away. What else is missing though? We've got this back spot, right? We got to show that. And that's tracking it across. So now when we do match properties, that's a hidden line. Match properties for the center lines. See that? I don't have to redraw them. Isn't that nice? Okay. This is as a, I'll just shorten this one down a bit. It would be beautiful if they could come out as perfect center marks like they do when we do hand drawings. The answer is no, not possible. Get over it. I literally have to tell people that. Get over it. You're not going to get the center lines perfectly in position. Yes, there's something called center mark. Have you guys noticed that one yet? If you go under, let's see, where is that under? I think it's under, I don't use it, to be honest, because it's extra work and I'm too lazy for it. Under annotate, see where it says center mark? Okay, people have used this instead of putting in center lines like this. Okay, they've actually used center mark, and you drop them in like that. The reason I find it extra work is because the gaps are not perfect, and I still got to go drag them out, so I don't care much for them. Plus, I have a preference of showing to my client that everything is lined up together. And this line needs to be lined up with this line. This line represents the center of these two holes, and that's why I prefer just drawing center lines. But yes, when you do that, you lose the ability to control those perfect little center marks. Okay? I'm letting you know that it's okay with me. Somebody else might not like it, but in my case, I'm good with it. Am I done with this? What's missing in the right side view? The lines that represent your counterbore. Because if you look at the drawing, we have a counterbore here. The diameter 0.13, which is 0.125 through, that's a through hole. Diameter 0.25, which only goes 1/8 of an inch deep. So when I'm over here, I would offset 1/8 of an inch, because that's the counterbore depth. And then I would reference my lines that just drag them over. See that? Use my right side view, not my right side, in this case it's my front view, to build my right side view. Remember that. Don't build from scratch. Use your views. That's how you make sure they're perfect. Once you have the first one built, then you can complete the second one with relative ease, because you can always copy it down from this end point to the reference of those 2 points. See that? And then you can use the trim command, pick everything, so you can just lob off the elements of that line that you don't want. And then what's the last thing I need to do? I got to turn them into what? Hidden lines. So I go back to Home, Match Properties. I've got a hidden line here. Pick these guys. Make sure I pick everything. Those become hidden lines. Now they only need what? A center line. Here is probably where I would say it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another if I use the center line function right here. If I do, I pick the two lines that represent the center of the object. Now what do I have? I have a line. I don't like it. If I extend it, it doesn't turn into a center line. So I don't like it. So what should I do instead? What I've already done, I'm going to draw the line, drag across. See that? I'm going to draw those instead. And then do a match properties of this line, center line, to this guy. Now these don't change because the lines are really short. Got to extend them a little bit. Question is how far before they become visible center lines. So this one's tough. Those center lines don't want to really look like center lines right away. So what could you do? Change this line type scale again over here. Okay, change it to a different scale factor. See where it says current object scale? I can affect just that one object. I don't get too picky that way though. I usually say we just stick with one and be done with it. Just make them a little longer. So this is what the front view and the right side view look like of this object using the same color for everything. I haven't discussed layers yet. That's another way to control all these extra lines on the drawing. So I could look at it cleanly with or without center lines, as if I use layers, but that's for a different video. For now, the thing that's missing is the auxiliary view. Because for all the dimensioning that you're going to do, you will never, ever be able to dimension this object. Meaning, you'll never get the diameter of this object. Why? Because it's not a diameter. You'll never get the diameter of these objects. They're not diameters, they're ellipses. Ellipses are not round, so therefore they have no diameter. They have actually like 3 diameters at least. 3 different diameters that they're using to develop an ellipse. So this is where an auxiliary view comes into play. And that's typically off the view where you could see the object the clearest. So I'm going to copy, and that's for our purposes over here. I'm going to copy this over just for the purpose of starting it somewhere. And I've extended this line just to give me a guide. I'm going to copy this line over. Now the question is how far over? What's the width of the object again? I don't have the image. There it is. The width of the object is 1.25. So I'm going to offset 1.25. Okay. Here is where I could draw a real circle. Now, how do I do that? What's the center? 1.25. 0.625. See that? And the circle command is just your standard command. There's your normal circle. When I trim this circle, trim off the excess over there, and draw my little circle in the middle, which is my diameter of 0.5. Then I can draw a line over here as a break line. I could just literally hand draw a break line if I wanted to. It's no big deal. I drew the break line so I wouldn't have to draw the rest of the object. Okay. Now in this view, I am going to have to shorten this up because I can leave this here, to be honest. That's considered acceptable when you're doing an auxiliary view. I can do a match properties of this center line to this center line. And in this view, I can literally dimension those elements that I could otherwise not dimension. See that? Now the dimensions are coming out awfully big. And that's something else we're going to have to talk about, which is the scale of this drawing and the scale of the dimensions, because you can't have dimensions that are horribly oversized. Now I do have to ask this question. Is this distance correct? Probably not. Let's find out. From here to here, it's a little over. Why? Because when I drew my break line, I was a little sloppy in how I drew it. See that? So you want your break line to be aligned with where your object ends. I still drew it wrong. Have no fear, I can draw it wrong many, many times over. So let me move it one more time, this time with a very precise motion. And shorten that up correctly. And of course I'm going to have to shorten this up. Then I could delete that. Okay, now I can drop in a dimension right there, and I'll get that 1 inch mark, the correct 1 inch mark. See that? My break line is too long, so I want to shorten that, because I do want to see the gap between the dimension and the object. Here, the gap is there, but the center line overlaps the dimension, so I pulled it back just so that it doesn't, because I want that gap. Because you never want your dimensions to be touching the object. So for drawing the views, this is correct. Dimensioning those, another conversation, because those dimensions are way too large. Okay? So your goal right now is to be able to draw this thing, because the focus is learning how to draw these elliptical shapes. That's what your focus is. Everything else you know how to do at this point, it's putting in those elliptical shapes. The other thing that you don't know how to do at this point is the dimensioning, and that's for a separate video. Okay? So for now, this is what you have to build. That concludes this lecture for how to build this shape here in AutoCAD.